everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar. We appreciate your time and hope that you will find this webinar both helpful and informative. You are currently in listen-only mode. If you have any questions or comments during the call, please use the dialog box on the right-hand side of your screen. We will have time at the end of the webinar to go over any questions that were asked. If we don't get to all the questions in the time that we have here today, we will, if you email us, we will email you back the answer as soon as we possibly can. If you have any questions after we leave here today, you can email me at info@ahref.com. Today's webinar is being recorded and it will be on our website by the end of the day under webinar recordings. If you have any technical questions during the call, please call our office at 585-389-1900 and ask for me, Sherry. During this webinar, Alex Hetty-Manuel will be talking about some of the new features of the Inventor update that was recently released. If you would like any more information about this or any other Autodesk products, please contact me at info@ahref.com. I will now introduce you to Alex. He is an Ahref applications engineer with over 25 years of experience. Alex is Ahref's go-to 3D guy.
Thanks, Sherry, and thanks for joining us today, everybody. What we're going to be covering today are most, but not all, but most of the new features that are going to be found in your 2018.2.2 update. And we're going to concentrate, first off, I want to kind of set the stage a little bit by going to this next slide and talk a little bit about interoperability. Those of you that have been using Inventor now for a while probably have heard of AnyCAD, which is the ability for Inventor to utilize other CAD product or other CAD models within their design. So we added this functionality recently where we can now utilize, let's say, SolidWorks part files or alias files or CATIA or solid edge files inside of Autodesk Inventor with the ability to maintain the link back to the original file. So the AnyCAD technology gives us that capability. So we don't have to translate the files over. We can just use them as a linked file, very similar to like an XREF in AutoCAD or just a reference file in Inventor. So what they've done is they have added some interoperability improvements, and we're going to talk about those in a second. But before we do that, I want to remind everybody about probably one of the most important parts of the interoperability portion of Inventor is that we have this interoperability with Inventor itself. So in the past, and I just want to remind people this, and in the past, once you update and save a model in the newest release of Inventor, it was always impossible to go backwards, right? What they've done, and not in this dot release, but I just want to remind people what is available is if you have folks working in 2017 and 2018, a mixed environment, let's say one of your sister companies went to 2018, you're still in 17, we have this interoperability right within Inventor. I just wanted to remind people that. There is backward compatibility between Inventor 2018 and 17. You're not saving as, it's nothing like that. It's very much just like the AnyCAD vehicle that we use with the other file formats. So you can insert your 2018 version file into a 2017 assembly, maintain the link to 2018. When it's updated in 18, it will update. The other thing I want to mention is when we do open a file now, it's kind of hard to see in this slide, but the versioning is listed right in the open dialog box. It's right here. It's kind of a red box right here, if you can see that. So you can always kind of identify what release. You don't have to dig into the properties and anything like that. So you can kind of work in that mixed environment. So that was just setting the stage for you. So let's see what they've done in 2018. So interoperability has moved over to Fusion 360 now. So at this point, we have, with the 2018.2 release, we have a preview that will allow you to move data between the desktop and the cloud. Now, I'm going to read just down through these notes here. AnyCAD, this is basically called AnyCAD for Fusion. So AnyCAD for Fusion 360 is available right now as a preview in 2018.2. What the preview allows you to experience is these new features basically on a test-only basis within Inventor before these features are fully released. So you get a chance to try it out. So if you happen to be using Fusion and you want to mix the designs together, that's now possible. The new AnyCAD workflow allows you to take advantage of the power of Inventor and Fusion together. So this AnyCAD support has been expanded to Fusion 360 design files. We could bring 360 Fusion design files directly into Inventor for system integration. We can use them for large assembly design and documentation. When the Fusion design is updated, the changes can be consumed inside of Inventor. Similarly, you can reference Inventor, CAM, and more. And a lot of people really like this, or what I've heard is folks being able to use the simulation tools that Fusion offers with the cloud, the ability to solve your simulations out in the cloud. So you could take your Inventor design, bring it into Fusion, set it up for a simulation, and run it out in the cloud. So AnyCAD gives us that kind of a flexibility. And how's it going to work? Well, basically, it's pretty simple. To share the data between Inventor, which is a desktop application, and Fusion, there are a few things we have to set up. First off, you have to install what's something called Desktop Connector. So what this does is it enables you to move data between the desktop and the cloud by placing a virtual drive basically on your desktop. And that virtual drive is the sharing area, if you will, of the two products. It installs a desktop folder that provides direct access to the Fusion team cloud space. So your next step is to download the desktop controller installer from your profile menu in your Fusion team account. Now, first off, what is a Fusion team account? You have to have that in order to do this. So the Fusion team account is used for sharing data in a centralized location in the cloud. So once everything is set up, you can import and open Fusion 360 design files from your Fusion 360 drive with an option to convert or create an AnyCAD reference. So you can convert the files as well if that's required. If you import a Fusion design file as an AnyCAD reference model, it will maintain the link to the selected file, which enables you to monitor and update as the model changes. This workflow allows you to use the Inventor data in 360 and the 360 data in Inventor, allowing a more flexible design and manufacturing process. And what you would see is something like this, which we're used to seeing, where you have an option when you bring in this file, whether you want to reference it or convert it. If you do convert it, it converts it into a quote-unquote a dumb solid. There are no features or anything like that. You can add features and so on. And once the conversion is done, then there's no link back to the original. So keep that in mind. So that's one of the bigger improvements in 2018.2. Let's go on and look at a few other ones. Kind of along these lines now is we have the ability to resolve any missing ACAD references. So we've all run across that situation where you open up an Inventor assembly and it's missing one of the files, somebody renamed them, moved them, or so on. And when that happens, you can always navigate over. This was not true with AnyCAD files, but now it has been extended to that area. If you do open a part or an assembly file that's missing references to one or more AnyCAD files, you will be able to use the Resolve Link dialog box so you can search to locate the missing reference. If you select to skip the unresolved references, which you can do, the unresolved icon displays next to the top browser node in the open file. And you could see that in the graphic right here, this question mark. You can then reopen the Resolve Link dialog box by just right-clicking on the top node of the browser and then selecting the new context menu option resolve file, which you see here in the graphic. So that's a nice little addition. Let's look at our next addition. We now have support for moving points attached to DWG underlay geometry. So in the past, once you created a dimension on a DWG underlay geometry, the point that attached to the dimension could not be reattached to a different point. But now we have the ability to simply drag that dimension boundary line and attach the point to a different geometry. So that's a nice improvement. These are all kind of small, little bitty things. There are a few good ones that I'm going to actually show you live in a quick demo too, in just a second. Next, a quick one here. We all know that recently we have introduced something called model-based definition into Inventor, which gives us the ability to add geometric dimensioning and tolerancing. We can add notes. We can add dimensions right directly to the 3D model, export that out in a variety of formats, and pass that along to our coworkers and vendors and so on, and customers. Well, they've improved that a little bit by just adding the all-around symbol, which is something that it was missing. So that has been added to the feature control frames. Along these lines as well is now, once we've annotated that model-based definition model, and let's say we want to share it with someone, we use 3D PDF. We could still do that. That's supported, but now it supports associative face highlight for tolerance annotations that reference multiple faces. So if you click on the tolerance itself, it will actually show the faces that are referenced. So that's kind of a neat thing. And that's right within the PDF file, so the 3D PDF file. Another thing they've done is, guess what? DWF is not dead yet. It's still there, and they've actually paid attention to it. They now support DWF now supports 3D annotations. So very similar to what the PDF supports, we can now do that in DWF. The export panel in the part assembly annotation tab is shown right there in the graphic, and that's where you're going to grab your export to DWF. And then once in the DWF, you could toggle on and off the visibility in the exported file. So they've improved that a little bit. Let's take a look at the next slide here, and this shows us a little bit of an improvement in the sheet metal environment. So something that they recently added inside of Inventor is the ability to use different unfold rules for specific features within a sheet metal body, right? So you could say, okay, for this bend, I'm going to use this K factor. For this other bend, I'm going to use a different K factor. And once you've set up these different rules, there was no easy way to go back and synchronize all the features to use the same rule if you changed your mind. So this was a real hassle because people were changing the rules and then realizing it's not coming out right and they want to start from scratch. So what this release allows us to do is there's a new command that lets us synchronize all features to use the same unfold rule with just a single click. So no longer do you have to go to each feature and set up the rule over and over again. To use the command, just right-click on the body in the browser and select the Sync Unfold rule, and that will present you with this dialog box. And what you'll see is if there are multiple unfold rules at different features within the part, it'll come up as varies. And then you can go ahead and select a new one or go back to the default and so on. So it's not a ground-shaking thing, but it's a time saver. Another thing that they've modified a little bit is the ground and root component command. In the past, inside of the assembly environment, when we wanted to move a component in the feature tree, ground it, and put it at the top of the tree, we had a command called ground and root component, but it had no options in it. So what they've done in this release is they've renamed the component to ground and root, okay? And now this will, when you start this, once you select one or more parts, you will be presented with a dialog box that looks like this, which you can now choose out of this dialog box what you want to do within it. So what you want to do within the command. So what they've done here is they've given us the ability to pick and choose what option we would like to use during the ground and root component. So you can either ground at origin, create flush constraints, or reposition the top of the browser, or do just one or two of these things. I'll show you that one really quickly in a little bit too. Nothing amazing, but it's not bad. Next, the other thing that we can now do is edit, modify, and change values of suppressed constraints. So in the past, if we had a constraint that was suppressed, it was uneditable. We'd have to unsuppress it, make the change, and then suppress it again. So now all we have to do is right-click on the constraint, even if it's suppressed, and we can go ahead and edit that. When you edit the suppressed constraint, the browser nodes are updated with the new values, so you'll see them right in the browser, and the edited constraint remains suppressed and unsolved in the assembly, because of course if it's suppressed, it's not going to update, right? So you can go in and make your changes, excuse me, and then once you're done making your changes, when you unsuppress that constraint, that's when it's going to update. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Really, there's really not much there. What you'll do is you'll just right-click on the suppress constraint, and then you can edit it or modify it, and so on. So you can do these things while the constraint is suppressed. Then our next slide, let's take a quick look here. This will actually show you. This looks small, but it's actually really pretty cool. Finally, we can export our Inventor files. We can always export them as PNG, TIFFs, bitmap images, and so on. But now, with the PNG, TIFF, or bitmap image, you can now suppress with a transparent background, which really makes it a lot easier to place these graphic images inside Word documents and so on, without you having to go in and manipulate the background, because we always have that either blue background or whatever color you happen to be using. Yeah, you can use a white background, but you'd still see something, right? With a transparent background, it trims around the edges very nicely, very quickly, and I'll show you how that's done too. I'm going to show you that in a quick demo. Another quickie, which I really like, and it's something small but it's very, very useful, is the ability to toggle on a 2D sketch by just simply selecting on a face. You're going to see a brand new button there called Make Sketch Visible, and it does exactly that. You can pick on a face, anything, any sketch that's relating to that face, you'll be able to make visible and, of course, make edits and so on. It's the same as going into the browser and making it visible that way. But this is a much easier and quicker method because you don't have to go searching for the feature in the browser. You can just pick directly on it, on the model. So that's a nice enhancement. The next, we're almost there. The next enhancement here that I find very nice is the measure enhancement improvement. Okay, we all know, those of you using 18 know, the measure tool has been completely redone. They did a good job, but they kind of screwed up because they took out the ability to accumulate measurements. Now the function for accumulating these measurement values is back, and it's a lot easier to use, and it's improved. You can now add the values of any of the types of measurements that you can take, like linear, area, volume, and angle measurements, and calculate a total measurement. Not only that, you can make selections and you can choose to remove or add those values at any time after you've made the selection. In other words, you can take, if you decide you don't want to include a certain measurement, you'll see it right in your measure tool. And I'm going to actually show you that one too, because it's really worth it. The way the enhancement works is a length value is added to the distance. I don't have any graphics here because I'm going to show it to you in about 2 seconds. The length value is added to the distance measurement under the accumulated properties, and then there's a little plus sign there, and you can choose that. But we're going to take a look at that, so I'm not going to bother reading this. So There are a few other, that's all I'm going to really cover, or what we're covering today. I just want to make you guys aware of that. There are a few other improvements in iLogic, for instance. There's something about autocomplete has been improved there. So you might want to go take a look at the help file and see what else is new, see if it applies to you. But in the next few minutes, I'm just going to go through a couple quick examples of some of these new features inside of Inventor. So the first thing I'm going to do here is let's cover the measure command a little bit. Sorry, I'm just adjusting my mouse here. So here we have a simple, some of you who have ever taken my class may recognize this thing. It's the bore base. And what I want to do is I want to measure, let's say I want to measure the distance between this hole, and then from this hole down to this hole, and then from this hole all the way over to this face. And I want to take those values and add them all up. So now, using the new measuring tools, this becomes pretty darn simple. So I'm just going to right-click and start the measure command right here. Now, as you guys are aware, once the measure command is active, it's going to show up over here in your browser. Let me kind of shrink that up a little bit so you can get a better view. There we go. So this is where we're going to see the information. So the first thing I want to do is I want to start from the center axis of one of these holes. So I'll use my select other tool and grab that axis. So that puts our first point right there, and we're going to go over to the center axis of this hole. Let's go ahead and grab that. Now, once that's there, you can visually see it on your screen. You see that 20 millimeters. So it's 20 millimeters from center to center. And there's the distance over here. So this is where the new improvements are. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit this add to accumulated value. So now this categorizes it, and it has an accumulated properties area at the top of the browser. So for my next selection, I'm going to come down here and go to that center axis. And that's going to show the value of 22, right? So yeah, I could write it down, but I could also just come over here, push this button. Now you can see my total distance is 42. My minimum distance for the first selection was 20, and this is 22. So for my next selection, I'm going to go from there, go right to this face. So this is going to add this other value, and we're just going to simply take that guy and add to the accumulated value. So it's that simple. So you've got your accumulated value right here on the left, and you have your distances that you took previously. Now what's kind of cool is, let's say you don't care about the distance between here and here. You just want to know the distance from here to here out to this face. All you've got to do is just eliminate that or delete that accumulated value and watch what happens to the number. Bingo. So it's basically nothing earth-shattering or anything like that, but it's kind of a neat thing to be able to do that. It makes it very, very simple. As soon as you exit the command, if I escape out, exit the command, everything goes away. Right? It doesn't store that. You'd have to go back in and start basically over, because this is just a quick measuring tool. So you can see how easy that is to do. I mean, this way you can even add up any kind of value. I mean, I could pick a face, and I can get an area, right? Let's say I want to add that into my list. I could pick another face, take that area, right? Add that up there, boom. Right, and then your oh, this is the one I actually wanted to add. Let me delete that one, and let's add that one. So see what that's doing there. So it's a real simple tool, and they finally made it easy. And in the past, it was always very cumbersome and so on. So that's one little thing I'm going to show. Let's take a look at another new tool that we have in here, and that's the ground and root component I was talking about earlier. So in this little simple assembly here of the arm bracket based system here, I've got an assembly. I've got no grounded parts whatsoever. So what I want to do is, let's say I want to move this to the top of my browser and then ground it, and also add some constraints, let's say, right? So I'm going to go ahead and use the ground and root. That's the new name of this command. It's located in the let's review, under the productivity panel, under the assemble tab. You're going to find the ground and root right there. So with this, here's our dialog box, and let's say we want to grab this guy here, and we're going to go ahead and reposition that to the top of the browser. We're going to also create flush constraints, which will allow us then to edit those constraints later. And I can say grounded or ungrounded, but this is easy. I mean, you can always unground it later. So as soon as I say OK, you can see nothing looks different on the screen. But sure enough, if I come in here, there's the flush constraints, right? So what I could do is I can then unground this. And let's say I want to move the whole assembly back and forth, let's say 200 millimeters, right? So you could see it offsetting there. Right? Maybe I go negative 200. Let's go into the back. So with that, that was done automatically. I didn't have to apply those constraints manually or anything like that. Let's go back to 0. And yeah, you could treat them just like anything. You can delete these if you don't want them, ground it back. You know, obviously, if this is grounded, you don't need those constraints. So it's up to you how you want to do it. So you can choose not to ground it and use the constraints instead. Next, let's go ahead and quickly go back over to our board device. And what I would like to do here is show a little bit about how we can create these JPEG images, bitmap images quickly without the background, or I should say the ping images. So let's say we wanted to grab this board device and put it over in a document, right? I've got a document here. It's just a blank Word file, folks. And I'm gonna go ahead and jump back and forth in here. I'm gonna pop that in. So what I'm gonna do first, I wanna make it look cool. So I'm gonna go over to the view. I'll change my visual style. Let's go to a realistic style. Which will give it a little bit of shading. Let's go ahead and turn on the shadows as well. All right, so nothing great here, but let's just do a quick view of this. So now what we can do is let's go ahead and export this as an image. So we're going to do that right from the application menu. And I'm going to go ahead and use the ping option, and I'm going to go to options here to verify that my transparent background is on. So this is a nice deal here. So I'm going to say OK to that. And I'm going to move this, I'm going to save this image up on my desktop. You can see it so we can find it easily. And I'm going to put it in a folder called Images, and I'll call this Web-1. Okay. And basically, that is all there is to do, right? So now we have that image. Let's go take a look at it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it right into this Word document. So I'll jump back over to Word. I'm going to go ahead and say Insert. Go to Pictures. And it just so happens to be I'm in that folder. You can see I've done this a few other times. We've got that Web-1, the one I just created. When I insert that, you know, that looks pretty decent. It's completely white background. Click over here to deselect it. Yeah, it's just a picture. You can move it around just like you'd expect. You can scale it up and down and so on. But the nice thing about this is the edges are pretty clean and so on. And you can get a pretty high quality image if you want to. So, you know, do you really need to render and do all that kind of stuff? What you could do, here's another option. You can turn on ray tracing. Okay? When we turn on ray tracing, we have this capability down here. Now you can look at that image. It's a little better than the one that we just created, right? So I can do a draft. Let's do a draft ray trace, which will take probably about 10 seconds. A high-end ray trace will probably take like 10, 15 minutes. So obviously we don't have time there. So let's do a quick draft ray trace. Save this out as another image and drop it in. And we'll kind of compare the two to the one I created. So it's, let's see, when I did this before, it took about 12 seconds. Seems to be taking just a hair longer than that, probably too long. And you know what? I don't have the right lights. But do we have the patience? No, we don't have the patience. So I'm going to pause that. But I could save that, and actually it's a little dark because it's a little, but I can save it right here too. Here's another thing that we can do. I can come right here, save this as a ping file. This won't look that great because I did a quick and dirty job I'll go to my desktop images. I'll call this V2, right? It's going to be a little ugly. But here we go. Let's go take a quick look. We'll go ahead and insert V2. And there's V2. Oh, I forgot to turn on the transparent background. Boy, is that ugly. Okay, so let's delete that. You get the concept. I've got another image that I did earlier, so let's insert that, and you'll get the idea, only because I forgot to turn off the background. So let's go to this high HQ one. So it's basically the same thing. There we go. So this shows a little bit of difference than this guy here, you know, a little bit more realistic looking. You got the shadows working and so on. And this is done directly inside of Inventor without you having to go into Inventor Studio or to take this out to some third-party rendering package and so on. So at this point, that is all I'm really going to show. Let me hop back over to my presentation. And I want to just talk about real quick the next steps that I want you guys to take. If you want to talk to any of us, please, here's where you can contact either Mike, Garrett, or Julia, depending on where you're listening. If you're out in Buffalo area, go ahead and give Garrett a call. Anybody around Rochester, give Mike or Julia a call, and we can certainly help you out. How can we assist you? We've got all kinds of different options here. We offer all kinds of support services, training services, data management, and so on. You guys know us. You know what we can do. Please give us a call if you need any help. And lastly, this will be available on the web. Oops, I went the wrong way. Sorry. This will be available on the web at our homepage. Just go under News and Webinar Recordings. You'll see that up there probably by the end of today. And lastly, I just want to thank everybody for showing up. Appreciate your business. And the very last thing, actually, I got my slide out of order here, is are there any questions? I'll open it up for questions. Does anybody have any type of questions that I can try to answer at this time? Do you see anything coming in, Sherry?
I don't see anything right now. If you guys have a question, you can use the dialog box on the right-hand side of your screen. Again, if you have any questions after the call, email me at info@ahrefs.com. I'll forward it to Alex, and he can email you back. Just another quick thing, we are having an AutoCAD electrical webinar next Tuesday. If you're interested in that, it's on our website, the link to sign up for that. If that is it, we hope you guys have an awesome rest of the day. Hopefully it's not too snowy there. And have a great week, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So long.